Have you ever stayed silent while everyone around you assumed you were a failure? Imagine sitting at your own grandfather's birthday dinner, listening to your family laugh about your life, wondering how someone with so little ambition even managed to afford the drive there. Now, imagine smiling through every insult because you already know something they don't. Something that within the next hour will completely change every relationship in that room forever. Because sometimes the quietest person at the table is the one holding all the cards. And this family was about to learn that lesson the hard way.
For years, Emma Brooks was treated like the family's biggest disappointment. While her siblings flaunted luxury cars, six-figure careers, and expensive lifestyles, Emma quietly lived in a small apartment, drove an old SUV, and worked an ordinary job, or so everyone believed. At her grandfather's 70th birthday celebration, the insults became more humiliating than ever. But when an unexpected guest arrived carrying sealed legal documents, one shocking revelation changed everything. The family that mocked Emma suddenly realized they had never truly known the truth about the woman sitting silently at the end of the table.
The invitation arrived almost a month before the party. My grandfather, Walter Brooks, was turning 70. The celebration would be held at the Grand Meridian, the most exclusive hotel in the city. Crystal chandeliers, rooftop ballroom, valet parking, and a waiting list for weddings stretching nearly 2 years. Exactly the kind of place my older brother, Nathan, loved. He had already started posting online about planning the event of the year. My sister, Olivia, filled our family group chat with pictures of designer dresses she couldn't decide between. Meanwhile, I simply replied, "I'll be there." No one reacted. That wasn't unusual. For the last 8 years, I had become almost invisible inside my own family. Not because I disappeared, because they had already decided who I was. The unsuccessful one, the dreamer, the sibling who never lived up to her potential. They believed I rented a tiny apartment across town, that I worked a modest office job answering emails for a logistics company, that I barely made enough money to pay my bills. The funny part? Every single piece of that story had started with the truth, years ago. Then, my life changed. I simply stopped explaining it. Sometimes silence is easier than arguing with people who've already written your story. Saturday evening arrived. I parked my 12-year-old silver SUV behind rows of luxury vehicles, Mercedes, Porsches, Range Rovers. My old SUV looked completely out of place. I smiled. It always did. As I stepped toward the entrance, I heard someone call my name. "Emma!" Olivia hurried over, wrapped in a shimmering gold evening gown. She hugged me quickly before stepping back and looking me up and down. "Oh," she forced a smile. "You actually wore that?" I glanced at my navy blue dress. Simple, elegant, comfortable. I like it. "I'm sure you do," she laughed softly. "I just thought, considering the venue, you'd maybe dress up a little." Before I could answer, Nathan walked over holding 2 glasses of champagne. "There she is." He handed one to Olivia. Not me. "Parking was rough?" "No." "You had to use the public lot?" "I parked outside." "Oh." He nodded toward the valet line. "I figured the fee might have been a little much." Olivia laughed. Neither of them noticed I didn't. Inside, the ballroom looked incredible. Live string quartet, fresh orchids on every table, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the skyline, hundreds of tiny candles reflected against polished marble floors. At the center sat my grandfather, still standing tall despite the gray hair. The moment he saw me, his face lit up. "There she is!" He opened his arms. "My favorite late arrival." "I'm only 3 minutes late." "You've always made an entrance." He hugged me tightly. Unlike everyone else, his hugs always felt real. For a moment, everything else disappeared. Then my Aunt Rebecca walked over. "Emma," she smiled politely, "we saved you a seat." She pointed toward the far end of the enormous table, the only empty chair, next to two teenagers who were wearing headphones, almost as far away from Grandpa as physically possible. I thanked her anyway. Some battles weren't worth fighting. Dinner began with speeches. Nathan stood first. He talked about success, legacy, hard work. He somehow managed to mention his recent promotion 4 separate times. Everyone applauded. Olivia followed. She spoke about family traditions, about always supporting one another. I nearly laughed. Then came my turn. Grandpa smiled. "Emma?" I stood slowly. Every eye turned toward me. "I just want to say thank you." I looked directly at Grandpa. "For teaching me that a person's character matters more than their title, for showing me that kindness lasts longer than money, and for reminding me that success means very little if the people around you don't feel loved." The room became unusually quiet. Grandpa's eyes watered. He nodded once. "Best speech of the night." Nathan forced a smile. Olivia looked annoyed. Dinner arrived shortly afterward. Steaks, fresh seafood, imported wine. Everything looked incredible. Halfway through the meal, Nathan leaned toward me. "So, still working that office job?" "Yes." "I bet it's nice." "What is?" "Not having all the pressure." He gestured around the room. "My company crossed 18 million in annual sales this year." Olivia smiled proudly. "I'm finally making partner next January." Then both of them looked at me, waiting, expecting embarrassment. I simply cut another piece of steak. "I'm happy for both of you." Nathan frowned. "No promotion?" "I'm doing fine." "Still renting?" I smiled politely. "I'm comfortable." Olivia whispered just loud enough for several relatives to hear. "Comfortable usually means broke." A few people chuckled. I pretended not to notice, because I had learned something years ago. People often reveal more about themselves than about you. The evening continued with laughter, stories, and subtle comments aimed in my direction. Every expensive watch became a conversation. Every vacation became a competition. Every achievement became another opportunity to remind me where I supposedly stood. Then dessert arrived, a towering chocolate cake covered in gold flakes. The lights dimmed. Everyone sang happy birthday. Grandpa blew out the candles. For a brief moment, the room actually felt warm, peaceful. Then the ballroom doors slowly opened. A sharply dressed man carrying a black leather briefcase stepped inside. He scanned the room. His eyes landed directly on my grandfather. Then, to everyone's surprise, he turned and started walking straight towards me.
Every conversation stopped. Even the musicians in the corner seemed quieter. The man in the tailored charcoal suit walked across the ballroom with calm confidence, carrying a worn leather briefcase under one arm. Nathan frowned. Olivia whispered, "Who is that?" No one answered. The stranger stopped directly beside my chair. "Miss Emma Brooks?" I looked up and smiled. "Good evening, Mr. Lawson." He extended his hand. "It's good to see you again." "You too." Nathan looked completely confused. You know him? Before I could answer, Grandpa stood. David, he said warmly, I wasn't expecting you until after dessert. David Lawson smiled politely. I apologize for the interruption, Walter, but the timing is important. My aunt folded her arms. Excuse me? Who exactly are you? He reached into his jacket pocket and handed her a business card. She read it silently, then read it again. Her eyebrows shot upward. Lawson and Pierce? Nathan leaned over and took the card. The largest estate law firm in the state? David nodded. One of the partners. Now everyone looked interested. Grandpa motioned toward the empty chair beside him. Please, sit. David remained standing. I'm afraid this won't take long. He placed the briefcase on the table and clicked open 2 silver locks. Inside were several thick folders, each sealed with blue ribbons. The atmosphere changed instantly. Olivia forced a laugh. Grandpa, you're not making a will announcement at your birthday party, are you? Grandpa chuckled. No, it's something much simpler. David removed a single envelope. My office was instructed to deliver these documents personally once everyone listed was present. Nathan's confidence returned. So this is about the family trust? David didn't answer. Instead, he looked at me. Miss Brooks, could you verify your identity for the record? I quietly reached into my purse and handed him my driver's license. He compared it with the document. Thank you. He returned it. Nathan stared at me. Why does he need your ID? I'll explain in a moment, David replied. The room became silent again. He opened the envelope carefully. For the past 7 years, our firm has represented a private investment company known as Evergreen Capital Holdings. No one reacted. The name meant nothing to them. David continued. Over that period, Evergreen acquired numerous commercial properties, development projects, and investment assets throughout the state. Nathan leaned back confidently. So, David paused. The sole owner of Evergreen Capital Holdings is seated in this room. Several heads turned towards Grandpa. David smiled gently. No. More silence. Then he looked directly at me. Miss Emma Brooks. Every face around the table froze. Olivia laughed. Actually laughed. Okay, that's funny. David didn't smile. Nathan looked irritated. Seriously, who owns it? David answered calmly. Emma Brooks. The words landed like thunder. No one moved. My aunt blinked several times. My cousin slowly lowered his fork. Nathan looked from David to me and back again. What kind of joke is this? It isn't one. David opened another folder. These are certified ownership records. He slid several papers across the table. Nathan grabbed them immediately. His confident smile disappeared within seconds. This? His voice cracked. This can't be right. Olivia leaned over his shoulder. Her eyes widened. Assets? She whispered. Commercial buildings, hotels, office towers. My uncle took another page. There are shopping centers listed here. David nodded. Correct. Another relative flipped through the documents. There are apartment complexes and medical offices and warehouses. The room suddenly felt much smaller. Nathan looked at me. You own all this? I folded my hands calmly. Yes. Since when? A while. A while? He almost laughed. Emma, this paperwork says these properties are worth, he swallowed hard, over $300 million. No one spoke. Not even Grandpa. Finally, Olivia found her voice. You work in an office? I do. You answer emails? Sometimes. She stared. What does that even mean? I smiled softly. I answer emails because I enjoy staying involved. David continued explaining. Miss Brooks serves as chairwoman of Evergreen. She also personally reviews several operating divisions. Nathan looked completely lost. But why? I shrugged. Because titles don't interest me. They never have. Olivia shook her head. No, this doesn't make sense. You've been driving that old SUV for years. I still like it. You wear clothes from department stores. They're comfortable. You never told anyone. I tried. The room became painfully quiet. I looked around the table. Do any of you remember asking? Nobody answered, because nobody had. Every conversation over the past 8 years had centered around promotions, bonuses, vacation homes, luxury brands. No one had ever asked what I was building. They simply assumed they already knew. Grandpa slowly smiled. I wondered how long you'd keep your secret. I looked at him. I wasn't hiding. They just weren't listening. Across the table, Nathan slowly lowered the documents. For the first time in his life, he looked completely speechless. And then, David reached back into his briefcase. There is one more matter. He placed a second sealed folder on the table. This one concerns Mr. Walter Brooks. The entire family looked at Grandpa. He nodded quietly. It's time. The smile faded from his face, and suddenly, everyone realized the evening wasn't over yet.
David rested his hand on the second leather folder. No one spoke. The room that had been filled with laughter just minutes earlier now felt impossibly quiet. Even the server seemed to sense something important was happening and stayed near the doors without interrupting. Grandpa Walter looked around the table, his eyes lingering on each member of the family. I've been waiting a long time for this conversation, he said softly. His voice carried the weight of someone who had spent years watching people change. I hoped it would never become necessary. Nathan leaned forward. What is this about? Grandpa sighed. For years, I've watched this family become obsessed with appearances, expensive cars, job titles, designer clothes, big houses. He looked directly at Nathan. You've measured success by income. Then he turned toward Olivia. You've measured people by their social status. Neither of them could look him in the eyes. And somewhere along the way, we stopped seeing each other. His words settled heavily over the table. David slowly opened the folder. Approximately 12 years ago, Mr. Walter Brooks established a private family trust. Several relatives immediately sat up straighter. Nathan's expression brightened. Olivia glanced nervously toward the documents. The trust includes investment accounts, farmland, commercial property, and various financial assets. My uncle whispered, How much? David answered without emotion. Current estimated value, approximately $68 million. Several gasps echoed through the room. Nathan instinctively straightened his tie. Olivia suddenly looked much more interested. David continued. Most members of the Brooks family believed these assets would eventually be divided equally. He paused. That assumption was incorrect. Silence. Nathan frowned. What do you mean? Grandpa folded his hands. I never promised equal. I promised fair. David removed another document. When the trust was created, Mr. Brooks included a performance clause. Nathan looked confused. A what? A performance clause. The future trustee would not be selected based on birth order
or income, or profession. It would be selected based on demonstrated character. No one moved. David continued reading. For the past 10 years, independent observations have been conducted regarding family relationships, financial responsibility, generosity, integrity, and treatment of others. Olivia's face turned pale. Nathan laughed nervously. Wait, are you saying we've been evaluated? Grandpa nodded. Every holiday, every birthday, every family gathering. You've all been teaching me who you really are. Nathan's smile disappeared. David opened a thin envelope. The evaluations are complete. He looked toward Grandpa. Would you like me to announce the result? Walter nodded once. Please. David took a slow breath. Effective immediately, the sole trustee of the Brooks Family Trust will be... He looked directly at me. Emma Brooks. Complete silence. Nathan actually stood up. No! There has to be some mistake. David calmly handed him the official paperwork. There isn't. Nathan flipped through page after page. Every document carried official signatures, notaries, legal seals. Everything was real. Olivia shook her head. This isn't fair. Grandpa looked at her sadly. No, it's exactly fair. You both built successful careers. I'm proud of that. But success without humility becomes arrogance. His eyes drifted toward me. Emma never asked me for my money. She never asked for recognition. She never tried to impress anyone. Even after becoming extraordinarily successful, she still visited me every Sunday. She still brought groceries when she thought I wasn't eating enough. She still fixed things around my house herself. I smiled awkwardly. It wasn't a big deal. It was to me, Grandpa replied. He looked back at the family. Do you know how many Sundays Nathan visited last year? Nathan stared at the floor. 1. And Olivia? She quietly wiped away a tear. 3. Grandpa nodded. Emma came 51 times. The room became painfully quiet. I wasn't testing your success. I was watching your priorities. Nathan's voice cracked. I didn't know. You never asked, Grandpa replied, gently. You assumed I wanted your money. What I wanted was your time. Tears filled Olivia's eyes. I'm sorry. I know. Grandpa smiled kindly. And that's why this isn't punishment. It's responsibility. He turned toward me. Emma? I looked up. I built this trust so our family would always have someone protecting it, instead of fighting over it. I believe you're that person. Emotion tightened my throat. I don't know what to say. He smiled. Say yes. I laughed quietly through my tears. Then yes. For the first time all evening, the room felt different. Not lighter, just honest. Years of assumptions, pride, jealousy, competition had finally been dragged into the open. But David wasn't finished. There is one final document. Everyone looked back at him. He removed a small envelope with Grandpa's handwritten signature across the front. This letter was written 5 years ago. It was only to be opened if Emma accepted the trusteeship. Grandpa smiled. I think now is the right time. He handed me the envelope himself. My hands trembled as I carefully broke the seal. Inside was a single folded page. I unfolded it. The first sentence immediately blurred through tears. If you're reading this, then you stayed exactly the kind of person I always hoped you would become. My hands trembled as I unfolded the letter. The room was completely silent. Even the servers had stopped moving. Grandpa smiled gently. Read it out loud, he said. I nodded and began. Dear Emma, if you're reading this, then you stayed exactly the kind of person I always prayed you would become. My voice cracked. Money changes many people. Success changes even more. But kindness is the rarest kind of wealth. I paused to collect myself before continuing. I watched every one of my grandchildren chase something different. Some chased status. Some chased attention. Some chased approval. You chased purpose. I looked up for a second. No one was moving. Every eye in the room was fixed on me. I continued. The greatest lesson my father ever taught me was this. Never place your family in the hands of the richest person. Place it in the hands of the person who would still love everyone if the money disappeared tomorrow. A tear rolled down my cheek. That's why I chose you. Not because you became successful, because success never became your identity. You never needed expensive things to prove your value. You never treated people differently based on what they owned. And even when members of our own family underestimated you, you answered them with patience instead of pride. I stopped reading. The words hit harder than I expected. Grandpa reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Finish it, he said. I nodded and began. If one day this responsibility becomes yours, remember, the purpose of wealth isn't to make one person powerful. It's to create opportunities for everyone around you. Protect this family, even when they don't deserve it, because forgiveness builds stronger legacies than revenge ever could. Love always, Grandpa. I carefully folded the letter. No one spoke for several seconds. Nathan slowly sat back down. His eyes were red. I don't deserve any of this. Grandpa smiled sadly. None of us deserve love. We receive it anyway. Olivia wiped away tears. I'm ashamed. I spent years trying to impress everyone. I thought success meant people looking up to me. She turned toward me. And all this time, I was looking down on the one person I should have admired. I smiled softly. We all make mistakes. Nathan stood and walked around the table. For the first time since we were children, he hugged me. A real hug. I'm sorry. I judged you. I laughed at you. I treated you like you weren't trying hard enough. I had no idea. I hugged him back. I know. He stepped away. But why didn't you tell us? I looked around the room. I tried. When I bought my first investment property, no one wanted to hear about it. When I started my company, everyone changed the subject. When I became financially independent, I realized something. If people only respect me after they know my bank account, then they never respected me at all. No one argued, because no one could. Grandpa smiled proudly. Exactly. David Lawson closed his briefcase. My work here is finished. Before leaving, he looked at me. Congratulations, Miss Brooks. You've inherited responsibility, not privilege. I understand. He shook Grandpa's hand and quietly walked toward the exit. As the ballroom doors closed behind him, the atmosphere completely changed. No one cared about expensive watches anymore. No one mentioned promotions. Luxury cars suddenly seemed meaningless. Instead, people started talking. Really talking. My aunt apologized for missing birthdays. My uncle admitted he'd spent years chasing business deals while neglecting his own children. Nathan confessed he hadn't taken a vacation in 5 years because he was terrified of falling behind at work. Olivia admitted that half the luxury items she posted online were financed through debt because she felt pressured to maintain an image. For the first time, nobody was competing. They were simply being honest. Nearly an hour passed before Grandpa quietly stood. He gently tapped his glass. "I have one final birthday wish." Everyone looked up. "I don't care who becomes richer. I don't care who buys the biggest house. I don't care whose business grows the fastest." He smiled. "I just want my family back." Silence. Then, one by one, everyone stood. Nathan walked over first, then Olivia, then my aunt, then my cousins, until all 12 of us stood together around Grandpa. Someone started crying. Then someone laughed through tears. Even Grandpa couldn't hold back his emotions anymore. It wasn't perfect. Years of hurt couldn't disappear in one evening. But something important had happened. The pretending had ended. As the party came to a close, Grandpa walked beside me toward the hotel entrance. Outside, the cool night air felt refreshing. He looked at my old silver SUV, still parked between luxury vehicles. He laughed. "You know, you could buy every car in this parking lot." "I know. So why keep driving this thing?" I smiled softly. "Because it still gets me where I want to go." He laughed louder than I had heard in years. "That's my granddaughter." Just before I opened the driver's door, he stopped me. "You know what makes me happiest?" "What?" "Tonight, they finally saw your heart before they saw your success." I hugged him tightly. "No," I whispered. "They finally learned the difference." As I drove home beneath the city lights, my phone buzzed nonstop. Messages from Nathan, from Olivia, from relatives asking to have lunch, to spend time together. Not to discuss money, just to reconnect. I smiled and placed the phone face down on the passenger seat. Tomorrow morning, I'd still wake up early, I'd still visit one of my properties quietly, I'd still drink coffee with employees who treated me like family, because the fortune I'd built had never been the most valuable thing I owned. That title belonged to something much harder to earn: character. And unlike money, no one could ever take that away.
Before you go, I have one question for you. What would you have done if your own family underestimated you for years? Share your answer in the comments. I read as many as I can, and I'd love to hear your story. If you enjoyed this emotional journey, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our next unforgettable story. We bring you powerful, emotional, and inspiring stories every week that remind us of one simple truth: never judge someone's worth by what you can see. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next story.